Hello, everybody, and welcome back to What's the Word? Today is Monday, March 22nd, 2021. And today, the word comes from 1 Corinthians 10, verse 14, which reads, "Therefore, my beloved, run from any sort of idolatry, and that includes loving anything more than God." Now that's pretty straightforward. An idol is anything that takes the place of God in your life. But what I want to talk about specifically is the idol of success or money. Now I know a lot of people just want to be successful and they're willing to do anything to work for that. But don't allow wanting to be successful take the place of praising God for where you are in your life and praying to Him and trusting in Him to lead you to where you want to be. Moving on to scoreboard watching and starting with the NCAA Tournament. First up is Georgetown, who fell in the first round to Colorado 96-73. Aside from turning the ball over, closing out on three-point shooters was one of Georgetown's major flaws this season, and Colorado took advantage. The Hoyas only committed 12 turnovers, but the Buffaloes shot 64% from long range, knocking down 16 threes, which was just under half of their 34 total field goals. Georgetown's run is over, but next year looks pretty promising for them if they can build off their late season success. Along with freshman point guard Dante Harris and a potential return from sophomore big man Qudus Wahab, the Hoyas will add five-star recruit and the third-ranked shooting guard Aminu Muhammad for the 2021-2022 season. As for Maryland, they advanced to the round of 32 by knocking off 7-seed UConn 63-54. The Huskies scored the first points of the game on an opening three-pointer, but that would be their largest lead of the night. As is their calling card, Maryland gained the advantage playing tremendous defense, holding UConn to only one field goal in the last 7:55 of the first half, and holding them scoreless for the final 3 minutes and 38 seconds of the opening 20. The Terps also had their shots falling, shooting 51% from the floor and knocking down 9 of their 18 three-point attempts. If there was one cause for concern, it was Maryland's ability, or lack thereof, to collect missed shots, as Connecticut out-rebounded them 40-29, including grabbing 22 offensive boards, 18 of which came in the first half alone. Eric Ayala led the way with 23 points on 8 of 14 shooting, knocking down 3 of his 5 threes and hitting all 4 of his free throws. Maryland advances to face 2-seed Alabama today at 8:45 p.m. As for Maryland's women's basketball team, they were drawn into the tournament as a 2-seed in the Hemisphere region, which is a location in Texas, and they will be facing 15-seed Mount St. Mary's today at 4 p.m. The Capitals had 4 games over the past week, so let's get to their action. Starting on Monday, the Capitals defeated the Buffalo Sabres 6-0. The Capitals finally defended a large lead to completion. 6 different Caps put their name on the score sheet, including Alex Ovechkin, who scored his 717th career goal, tying Phil Esposito for 6th on the NHL's all-time goal-scoring list. Vitek Vanacek in net earned his first career shutout, stopping all 23 shots he faced. The win at the time was Washington's 5th consecutive, and Buffalo's loss was their 11th straight. That led to the very next day on Tuesday, where the Capitals defeated the New York Islanders 3-1. Alex Ovechkin finally did it. With an assist on TJ Oshie's goal, the first of the game, Alex Ovechkin became the 35th player in NHL history to record 1,300 career points. Oh, and yeah, soon after that, he scored his 718th career goal, moving him past Phil Esposito for sole possession of 6th place all time. Since the goal was Ovi's 12th of the season, it also pushed him past Nicklas Backstrom for the team lead on the season. But Backstrom wouldn't let that last for long, as he also notched his 12th goal of the season just 28 seconds into the third period. The Islanders would get a goal back while on the power play, but in the end, they saw their 9-game winning streak snapped at the hands of the Capitals, who then pushed their own winning streak to 6 games. Both Ovechkin's and Backstrom's goals came on the power play as the team went 2 of 4 with the man advantage. Ilya Samsonov, making his first home start of the season, stopped 21 of the 22 shots he faced, 11 of which came in the first period alone. After a few days' rest, the Capitals were back in action on Friday, defeating the New York Rangers 2-1. Goaltender Vitek Vanacek stopped 32 of the 33 shots he faced, but thanks to a first-period power play goal, the Rangers still led 1-0 with just under 6 minutes left in the game. Leave it to the Capitals' captain to save their winning streak. With Washington needing late-game heroics, Alex Ovechkin parked himself in front of the net and went to work, tucking away 2 identical rebounds just under 3.5 minutes apart and delivering the Capitals their 7th consecutive win. In the second of a back-to-back against the Rangers on Saturday, the Capitals fell by a score of 3-1. Saturday's game mirrored Friday's contest in the way that the Rangers took a 1-0 lead in the first period and held on to it into the final frame. Again, like the previous game, the Caps evened the score in the third period, but the similarities end there as Washington didn't have any late-game magic up their sleeves. Instead, a costly defensive zone turnover by Brendan Dillon allowed New York a point-blank shot on goal, which they converted, and then sealed the game on an empty netter, snapping the Capitals' win streak at 7. Washington will be back looking for a new winning streak as they return to action on Thursday against the New Jersey Devils at 7 p.m. As for the Wizards, they also had 4 games of action, starting on Monday, losing to the Milwaukee Bucks 133-122, their 4th consecutive loss at the time. Bradley Beal dropped 37 points on 13 of 19 shooting, hitting 4 of his 7 threes and knocking down all 7 of his free throws. He'd also add 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 turnovers. Russell Westbrook added 23 points on 8 of 19 shooting, going 3 of 6 from 3 and 4 of 6 at the free throw line. He'd add a season-high 17 assists to go along with 5 rebounds and 5 turnovers. Rui Hachimura continued his stretch of improved play with 22 points on 9 of 18 shooting, knocking down a career-high 4 threes on 9 attempts, adding 7 rebounds and 5 assists. The Wizards trailed by 26 points in the third quarter and fought back to bring the game within 5 with 7 minutes and 47 seconds remaining. They even answered another Milwaukee run to cut the lead to 7 with 4:20 remaining. Washington shot 50% from the field and 42% from 3, but they were once again bullied in the paint, losing that battle 70-42. Giannis Antetokounmpo had a 31-point, 15-rebound, 10-assist triple-double, and the Bucks shot 55% from the floor. Overall, not a bad game for the Wizards, but again, they just got down by too much and their comeback fell short. That brought us to Wednesday, where the Wizards lost to the Sacramento Kings 121-119, their 5th consecutive loss. Bradley Beal had 29 points on 12 of 20 shooting, missing all 5 of his threes, but hitting 5 of his 6 free throws. He chipped in 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 turnovers. Russell Westbrook had 23 points on 8 of 19 shooting, hitting 1 of his 3 threes, and going 9 of 12 at the charity stripe. He'd also have his 12th triple-double with 14 rebounds and 10 assists, but of course 6 turnovers. Rui Hachimura cooled off a little bit with 17 points on 7 of 15 shooting, missing all 3 of his threes, but hitting all 3 of his free throws. He'd also add 9 rebounds and 2 steals. Starting in the place of Mo Wagner, who had his 3rd consecutive did-not-play coach's decision, was Alex Len, making his 3rd consecutive start, and he had a double-double, 13 points and 12 rebounds. Despite being a game-time decision with a rib contusion, Raul Neto gave it a go and added a nice spark off the bench. 12 points, 4 assists, 2 steals, and a game-high plus 11 in 27 minutes of play. The Wizards outscored the Kings in the paint 74-42 and out-rebounded them 52-38, but they shot 16% from 3, going 4 of 25, and committed 15 turnovers, which the Kings turned into 26 points. The game was tied at 66 going into halftime, and the Wizards once again came out flat in the third quarter and fell down by 11. Sacramento was limited to 2 field goals in the final 9 minutes and 30 seconds of the game, but the Wizards just kept fouling. Sacramento went 29 of 35 at the free throw line, or 82%, hitting 6 more free throws than the Wizards. Russell Westbrook had the last 8 points for the Wizards and tied the game at 119 with 22.6 seconds remaining, and then De'Aaron Fox, as part of his 28 points, knocked down the game-winning shot with 0.7 seconds remaining. The Wizards had a slight chance at the end, but Russell Westbrook threw the ball away on the inbounds play. Lo and behold, the very next day, the Wizards stepped up to the challenge and knocked off the Utah Jazz 131-122, snapping their 5-game losing streak. Although it didn't come without a cost, as Davis Bertans re-aggravated his right calf strain after only 4 minutes of play, and we found out that he'll miss about 2 weeks with that injury. Bradley Beal dropped 43 points on 16 of 24 shooting, hitting 4 of his 6 threes and knocking down 7 of his 8 free throws. He'd also add 5 assists, 2 rebounds, and only 3 turnovers. The Wizards also snapped the streak of 11 consecutive losses when Bradley Beal had scored 40-plus points. Russell Westbrook also had a really good game for the Wizards, dropping 35 points on 12 of 23 shooting, going 2 of 5 from distance, and 9 of 11 at the free throw line. He'd also add his 13th triple-double of the season with 15 rebounds and 13 assists, adding 2 steals, a block, and 5 turnovers. Mo Wagner once again did not play, coach's decision, but the Wizards got a good contribution from their centers as Robin Lopez and Alex Len combined for 20 points on 7 of 16 shooting, going 6 of 12 at the free throw line, and having the collective double-double with 11 rebounds. The Wizards are seemingly realizing their identity as a team capable of bullying opponents in the paint. They outscored Utah down low 54-38, though they were out-rebounded 47-43, 11-7 on the offensive glass. But overall, that's pretty impressive considering that Utah has Rudy Gobert down low, but more on Rudy Gobert in a little bit. The Wizards scored 24 points off of 17 Jazz turnovers, and they got out in transition, scoring 12 points off fast breaks compared to Utah's 3. The Wizards only made 7 3-pointers, but it came on 17 attempts, good for 41%. Meanwhile, the Jazz, who are the number 1 3-point shooting team in the league, took 48 threes and made 18, good for 37%. Washington built a 24-point lead in the second quarter, and despite Utah getting the score within 7 at the 6-minute and 20-second marker of the fourth quarter, the Wizards held on against the NBA's best team record-wise. Donovan Mitchell had 42 points, while Joe Ingles had a career-high 34 on 8 of 10 3-point shooting, so the Wizards still can't defend the 3-point line, but what they did do was contain Rudy Gobert, as he was held to 10 points on 2 of 10 free throw shooting, which brought the Utah Jazz down to 57% from the charity stripe on the game. That brought us to yesterday, where the Wizards lost in a close game to the Brooklyn Nets, 113-106. Russell Westbrook led the way for the Wizards with 29 points on 10 of 20 shooting, going 2 of 7 from 3 and 7 of 9 at the free throw line. Much improved at the line so far, so hopefully it continues. He'd have the near quadruple double with 13 assists, 13 rebounds, and 8 turnovers. More on that in a second. Rui Hachimura had 20 points on 9 of 11 shooting, hitting both of his threes, and he had the double-double with 10 rebounds. Alex Len, still starting in place of Mo Wagner, once again did not play coach's decision, had 20 points on 8 of 12 shooting, hitting 4 of his 5 free throws, and the near double-double with 9 rebounds and 2 blocks. Missing in action was Bradley Beal, who only had 17, a season low, on 6 of 15 shooting, about 8 attempts less than his season average, going 1 of 3 from 3 and 4 of 5 at the free throw line. He'd have 5 assists, 2 rebounds, and 6 turnovers. So the 14 turnovers out of the 2 stars really hurt. But the Wizards once again got it done with the center by committee, as Robin Lopez added 12 points on 6 of 9 shooting, adding 5 rebounds and a block. So even though Mo Wagner hasn't been playing, Alex Len and Robin Lopez combined for 32 points, 14 rebounds, and 3 blocks. So I can't be too mad at that. The Wizards were 2-0 against the Nets this season, only averaging 11 turnovers in their meetings, but they had 19 turnovers in this one, leading to 27 points for Brooklyn. And that was pretty much the difference maker, considering the Wizards only converted 7 points off of 7 Nets turnovers. The Wizards, who shot 7 of 21 from three-point range, blamed the lack of spacing for their offensive miscues. They shot 53% from the floor, but they only took 79 shots, and their bench only contributed 14 points. Conversely, the Nets shot 48% from the floor on 90 attempts, 31% from 3, going 9 of 29, and their bench chipped in 34 points. Each team scored 60 points in the paint, and the Wizards won the rebound battle 43-35, but just not enough shots for the Wizards, and you can blame turnovers for that, and you can blame them not wanting to shoot the 3 really. Kyrie Irving had 28 points for the Nets, James Harden had 28, and the surprise contributor was Nicholas Claxton off the bench with 16 points. He was only averaging about 8 points a game on the season, but the Wizards just lost him and key points in the game, and he dropped 16 points for them. Blake Griffin made his Nets debut, only having 2 points, but he had his first dunk since 2019. Next up for the Wizards, they start their back-to-back set with the New York Knicks on Tuesday in New York at 7:30 p.m. A lot of NFL free agency news to talk about, so let's get started with the Washington football team's additions and departures. First up, quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick on a 1-year deal worth $10 million, possibly $12 million with incentives, and I really like it. He's going to be 39 in November, and he's joining his ninth team in his 17th season, but I like the deal. He was the number 1 quarterback in free agency for a reason. I'm not saying he's the future of the team. Far from that, being 39 years old, but it's a good stopgap, a good mentor, and he doesn't necessarily have to be the starting quarterback. The news, along with the signing, said that he's going to compete for the starting role, so Taylor Heineke still has an opportunity, and Kyle Allen still has an opportunity. But Fitzmagic is coming to Washington. He takes a lot of shots downfield. That should really help with another addition that we added. I'll mention that in a moment, but it should help Terry McLaurin's stock go up. Chad Johnson, former wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, who also played with Ryan Fitzpatrick in Cincinnati, said that Terry McLaurin is on his way to having a 1,500-yard season. That's a little up there, but I'd be all for seeing that type of improvement from him, and I really like the deal for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Washington can still add a quarterback in the late rounds of the draft, potentially Kellen Mond. The next move was to add a cornerback after losing Ronald Darby. More on that in a second. Washington went out and signed William Jackson III to a 3-year contract worth $42 million, $26 million guaranteed. Now, I'm going to be honest, I wasn't really all that knowledgeable on William Jackson, but he was Cincinnati's first-round pick in 2016, 24th overall, and he missed his entire rookie season with a torn pectoral. But over the last 4 seasons, he's played in 59 games, tallying 3 interceptions, a 75-yard pick six included in 2017. He's had 41 pass deflections, which is really good, and 150 tackles. He'll only be 29 in October, and he's considered one of the best outside corners in the league, rated 12th by PFF since 2017. I really like the move. I didn't know much about him, but he's he hasn't been too much of a house name, considering that he came from Cincinnati, whose defense isn't all that good, and he comes to a better defense in Washington. If I remember the stat correctly, Washington was 4th in sacks per pass rush, while Cincinnati was 31st. So with less time for the quarterback to, pick out who he wants to throw to, it could help increase William Jackson's numbers. The 3 interceptions doesn't really worry me because the pass deflections are really good. If you remember, Ronald Darby led the league with 17 pass deflections last season, and William Jackson had about 7 pass deflections. So 41 over the 4 seasons that he's played is pretty good, and it should only go up. He'll most likely shadow the number 1 receivers, and it'll help Kendall Fuller not have to be targeted every single game. But I really love the addition to the secondary. And finally, another weapon for Fitzpatrick or whoever's at quarterback, signing Curtis Samuels to a 3-year deal with $34.5 million. I absolutely love it. He spent time in Carolina with Ron Rivera and that whole offense, Scott Turner as the play caller. But it's a great move. He has a 77% catch rate on deep targets in 2020, which is the highest among receivers. So he'll definitely add a deep threat to Washington, which they had been lacking. Not that Terry McLaurin isn't a deep threat, but that, they really had nobody to throw to in deep routes. He ran a 4.31 40 in the NFL Combine. So he adds more speed to an already speedy receiver room. Speaking of that Carolina connection, he was the 2nd-round pick of the Panthers in 2017, 40th overall, coming out of Ohio State. So he rejoins Terry McLaurin, who he spent some seasons with in college at Ohio State, and he'll only be 25 in August, so a lot of room to still grow. He had 77 catches last year for 851 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he also adds some versatility to the team, carrying the ball 41 times, mostly out of the backfield with Christian McCaffrey going down, and he added 200 yards with 2 touchdowns running the ball. So over 1,000 yards all-purpose and 7 touchdowns. Since 2019, he has 330 rushing yards, and he's forced 16 missed tackles, which is first among all receivers since 2019, and it would be top 5 among running backs if he was a running back. So that's tremendous. As for other additions that the Washington football team has made, they re-signed offensive tackle David Sharp. He played 10 games last year, started 2. Really good depth tackle for the team to have if he makes the team. He's only on a 1-year deal worth over $1 million, so it's possible that he doesn't even make the team out of training camp. And they also signed running back Lamar Miller. If you remember, they signed him to the practice squad late last season. He didn't see any action, but he's a former Pro Bowler, a couple 1,000-yard seasons with the Houston Texans. So more depth to the running back room. We'll see if he makes the team. They also re-signed cornerback and special teamer Danny Johnson to a 1-year deal. He was mostly a kick returner last year. I said earlier that they'd probably try to re-sign him. He could probably still grow as a cornerback. As for other outside moves that didn't garner a lot of attention but are still pretty good, they signed inside linebacker David Mayo and inside offensive lineman Tyler Larson, both to 1-year deals, both just over $1 million. So they're depth moves that possibly compete for a spot in training camp. Don't know if they make it, but they also have connections to Ron Rivera and the Carolina Panthers, spending 4 seasons with Ron Rivera when he was the head coach. David Mayo last played for the New York Giants. He started a few games, mostly coming in as a reserve. His best season was in 2019 before he got hurt at the start of 2020. He still could develop into a starting linebacker. He's only about 27 years old, I believe. So he still has some potential, but he's mostly just a depth move, and Washington still could address inside linebacker in the draft, potentially at 19. But on to the departures. I already mentioned cornerback Ronald Darby leaving. He's joining the Denver Broncos on a 3-year deal worth $30 million. And for the money that he got, I can't be too upset that he's leaving. I loved him with the team last year. I said earlier that he's a local guy and that he'd probably re-sign. But after betting on himself last year, he came in at a $6 million deal last season. So he parlays that into about $10 million a year. So good for him. I wish him nothing but the best unless they play Washington. Another loss, they lost linebacker Kevin Pierre-Louis. Finally figured out his name. It's Pierre-Louis, not Pierre-Louis, as the French pronunciation would be. But he's joining the Houston Texans on a 2-year deal worth $7 million. Ron Rivera said he wanted him back or a player like him. Instead, he leaves to go join Houston, and it's kind of an upsetting loss. He's only getting about $3.5 million a year, so it's definitely something Washington could have afforded. Ron Rivera said he wanted him back. Not sure what changed there. I don't think the price is too bad, but maybe they had different ideas. And finally, long snapper Nick Sunberg. I said after the end of the season that long snappers don't move on too often, but once again, I was wrong. He's moving on after 11 seasons with the team. As of now, he hasn't signed anywhere, but Ron Rivera let him know that he won't be returning. And speculation is that they're kind of weary of Nick Sunberg's triceps injury that he has. So that kind of affects, the ability to snap the ball, which is his only job. So I kind of understand it there. Switching things over to the Baltimore Ravens and their additions and departures. Starting with who they've added. They re-signed outside linebacker Tyus Bowser to a 4-year deal worth $22 million. Pretty good move. They needed edge rushers with some of the departures that I'll mention. So all in all, not too bad of a deal. 4 years, $22 million. And they also re-signed outside linebacker Chris Board to a 1-year deal worth $1.6 million. Kind of a special teams deal, but you saw last season that he made a few plays when he got snaps defensively. So I like the move. Not too much money tied up there, and only 1 year. And they also re-signed defensive end Derek Wolfe, giving him 3 years, $12 million. So about $4 million annually. I don't hate it. He really came on late in the season after some of his injuries. Apparently, he's a really good leader, as shown in the playoff games, kind of some of his locker room talk. But I like the deal. And the only other addition they made, other than Kevin Zeitler, the offensive lineman that I mentioned last week, was acquiring a tight end from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Getting tight end Josh Oliver from the Jaguars for an undisclosed pick, but reports say that it's conditional 2022 7th-round pick, with the condition being that he makes the team. And that's a big if, considering that Oliver, a 2019 3rd-round pick, has only played in 4 games, missing a lot of time with hamstring injuries and a broken foot. But if he can come back and be healthy and make the team, he's 6'5", 250 pounds, so a big target. And at that weight, he should be a good blocker. I don't know too much about him, but all in all, they don't lose too much, they don't gain too much. As for their departures, this really hurt me. They lost edge rusher Yannick Ngakoue, former Terp. He's going to the Las Vegas Raiders on a 2-year deal worth $26 million. So about $13 million annually. I can see why the Ravens couldn't afford that, but, what hurts even more is they lost their other edge rusher, Matthew Judon. He's going to the New England Patriots, who paid just about everybody, and he's getting 4 years worth $56 million. Definitely understand why they didn't re-sign him. It sounds like they could have re-signed Yannick, but reports all along were that they were most likely going to let both of them go. They lost another edge rusher, more of a defensive end, Jihad Ward. He's going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, 1 year, $2.5 million. I said at the end of the season I could see him returning because it wouldn't cost much to bring him back, and only $2.5 million. But apparently he wanted a fresh start. He goes and joins Jacksonville, where his old defensive line coach now resides. So good move for him. Sucky move for the Ravens. As for other moves we saw coming, center Matt Skura leaving, joining the Miami Dolphins for 1 year, $1.75 million. Not too much to say there. Struggle snapping the ball. The Ravens move on from him. They could replace him in the draft. Another move that they expected, wide receiver Chris Moore. More of a special teamer. He goes and joins the Houston Texans, so he'll reconnect with David Culley, who was the passing game coordinator in Baltimore before getting the head coaching job in Houston. That's a 1-year deal worth $2 million. And he also joins running back Mark Ingram. He's not really a departure for the Ravens since they released him, but still I wanted to give him his respect and mention him. He's getting a 1-year deal worth $3 million to join the Houston Texans and David Culley. Last but not least, another move that I didn't really expect, but the news came out actually a couple months ago. Long snapper Morgan Cox. The Ravens said they weren't bringing him back, although I did mention that long snappers don't move on too often. Once again, not the case. He's joining the Tennessee Titans on a 1-year deal worth $1.2 million. That's it for the Ravens. They didn't sign Kenny Golladay. He didn't go back. He went to the New York Giants, and Juju Smith-Schuster, he went back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So still no target for Lamar Jackson. They'll probably look to do something in the draft, or there's still guys like Will Fuller available. Not sure how likely he is to join Baltimore, but wide receivers have really struggled getting deals so far. The market is pretty large, but the deals are pretty low. But that does it for the Baltimore Ravens and all NFL free agency news up to this point. As for another Baltimore team, the Orioles made a move just before the start of the season, signing infielder Maikel Franco to a 1-year deal worth $800,000. The move could be potentially up to $1 million with incentives, or if he's traded, he'll get a trade bonus. And that's kind of the deal that it is for the Orioles. They often bring in players that they could potentially move late in the season. So if that happens, he'll get a bump in pay, but he's more of a third baseman, which kind of surprised me considering that the Orioles have Rio Ruiz, who I really like at third base, but obviously the Orioles wanted some more depth in the infield. He could possibly also play second base for them, as that's really the area where they need some help, second base and shortstop. But overall, just another infielder for them and somebody that could potentially move if he has a good season. Now for some news about some stadium openings. With the outlook of COVID-19 getting better, a lot of places and teams have started allowing fans in the venues, and that's starting to leak over to your local teams. A couple weeks ago, the Baltimore Orioles announced that they'll be having about 50% capacity for their home opener, but the Washington Nationals announced that they will host 5,000 fans for opening day on Thursday, April 1st against the New York Mets. And for DC United, they'll be welcoming 2,000 fans for their home opener on Saturday, April 17th against New York City FC. Staying with the news of venues opening, UFC President Dana White announced that UFC 261, scheduled for April 24th, will be taking place in Jacksonville, Florida, in front of a full capacity arena of about 15,000 fans. First off, prayers up to all 15,000 people who will be packing into an arena, but they will be getting a pretty good event. Joining the 2 championship fights that were already booked will be welterweight champion Kamaru Usman defending his belt against Jorge Masvidal for the second time. Interestingly enough, the challenger Masvidal will actually be getting the advantage of fighting in front of his home state of Florida. That fight will be joining the two fights that are already booked. Women's flyweight champion Valentina Shevchenko defending her belt against Jessica Andrade, and women's strawweight champion Zhang Weili defending her belt against Rose Namajunas. Last but not least, also coming out of the UFC, Dana White announced that Khabib Nurmagomedov is 100% officially retired, which we all knew, meaning that he will vacate his lightweight championship, setting up Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler to fight for the belt at UFC 262 on May the 15th. A lot of thoughts raced through my head after this one. I don't think that Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler are the best fighters in the lightweight division, but all in all, a really good fight to make. Charles Oliveira never lost to Khabib. Michael Chandler, only one fight in the UFC. Obviously, never lost to Khabib. So it does seem like the fight to make, with Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and Conor all having lost to Khabib. But this is one of the few cases where, the best fighter won't necessarily be the one holding the belts. I think Michael Chandler deserves to be in this position. I argued a few months back that Michael Chandler should have been the next to fight Khabib if he returned. So it makes sense that he's in this position, obviously building off of his first fight in the UFC. That's what fight promotion is about, keep up with the momentum, keep up with the hype. And Charles Oliveira deserves to be in this. He's on the highest, the longest winning streak in the lightweight division. Now the Khabib's retired, so he deserves the shot. But, a lot of people wanted to see Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor have the shot for the title. They will be running it back for their third fight, the trilogy fight, but that won't be happening at the May 15th date like a lot of people suspected, because those two are still fighting over money. So really for them, it's a money fight, and that's why we're getting this fight for the championship belt. But all in all, still excited. And before that, we have UFC 260, which will be taking place next weekend, this weekend upcoming, but I'll get more on that later in the week. That is all I have for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. God bless.